Hi, this is Frederick Buskey from Strategic Leadership Consulting. Thanks for tuning in to this series on leading from home. We're covering 5 topics in this series: routines, spaces, as in home office space, healthy practices, communications, and finally, renewal. There are 3 themes that go throughout this series. First is being intentional. So whatever you do, whatever choices you make about leading from home, be intentional about your choices. The second thing is limiting distractions and interruptions. And the third big theme is being fully and healthily engaged in whatever you're doing. Each video supplements material that can be found on my blog at frederickbuskey.com/blog. And these are being released in the last week of March, first week of April 2020. So if you're going there later, you can use the archive. So I hope you subscribe to this video. This is a critical time, and as we adjust to a new normal, I'm glad that you're taking me along on your journey with you, and I hope that what you find here is valuable and helps the great work that you do. Okay, let's get started. So the 3 renewal behaviors that we're talking about are actually fundamental to leading strategically. These 3 things are focusing on priority goals, doing uninterrupted focus work, and focusing on developing people. So when we think about what constitutes a priority goal, it's usually something that is going to move your organization forward, and that can include focusing on improving the abilities of the people who are in the organization. So what are priority goals, right? Priority goals come in 2 forms. They move your people forward, or they move your organization forward. 4 traits of them. They're generally an investment. So you're investing time now to get payoff later. They're proactive in terms of laying the foundation for something else. They're not about solving an immediate problem. That's more the urgent realm. We're talking about things that are important for the long term. We're talking about then proactive, not reactive. They tend to be additive versus corrective. And then finally, they should be related to your core practices or core strategies of execution. So if you're a Jim Collins nut like I am, from Good to Great, he talks about the flywheel. And the flywheel consists of the core practices or strategies that your organization uses to build momentum and to improve. And so if you have those kinds of core practices, what's essential to your business and what's essential to growing your business or making your organization stronger, that's something that we consider to be a priority goal or priority activity. In terms of uninterrupted focus work, I talked a lot more about that yesterday, so you can see part 4 on communications, which has some discussion about focus work. But just kind of to recap that real quickly, focus work can be individual, but it also can be work you're doing one-on-one in terms of helping someone else, or it can be something that's collaborative that you're doing with the team. And finally, developing other people. This really should be your number 1 priority. We get caught up a lot of times in, I think, strategy and presentation, putting out fires, solving problems. We do all the other stuff. But really, I think the essential job of leadership in most fields, the essential job of a leader is to develop people. If you develop your people, you're going to have fewer problems. You're going to have better product, better outcomes. You're going to have happier people who stick around longer. And consequently, you're going to have a better organization. So developing people as a leader should be your number 1 priority. Stop and think for a minute about the problems you have. Just think about all the stuff that goes wrong and all the problems and challenges you're facing in your organization. How many of those would be better if your people had more capacity? If your people had better answers, if they had better skill sets, more understanding of the situation, if your people were better, how would that impact all of these other issues and problems? Probably quite a bit. I'll use one quick example from education. I was walking into a rural elementary school late in the spring a couple years ago. I had a meeting with the assistant principal. I walked into her office, and you could just tell right away, like, it had been one of those days. It's 10 o'clock in the morning, but it had already been one of those days. Her hair was just frayed out. She had that look on her face. Her eyes were about this big, and her desk was just covered with papers. And I looked at her. I said, "Are you okay?" And she held up this stack of yellow papers, and she said, "I have 7 discipline referrals. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. I have 7 discipline referrals. Each one of these is going to take 45 minutes by the time I talk to the kids, talk to the teacher, call home. It's 45 minutes apiece. Like, my day's over. I won't get into any classrooms. I won't be able to get anything done on my list. Like, my day's over." And I said, of those 7 discipline referrals, how many of those are kid problems? And how many of them are actually teacher problems? That the kid's misbehavior really was as a result of the teacher not doing what the teacher should do. She looked at me and she said, 5 of 7 are teacher problems. Wow. Okay, so that's just a fantastic example, right? If we can invest in priority work and then we can develop our people, if she could help those teachers that those 5 kids are coming from, right? How much better is school going to be? How much better is her day going to be? And then how much more impact can she have because she starts to engage in proactive building activities instead of just putting out discipline fires. So that's specific to education. But I think about healthcare. If your nurses, if your desk people, if everybody just was better at their jobs, wouldn't that make for a better healthcare system and a better hospital or medical facility? If your marketing people were better at marketing and your sales people were better at sales, then things would be better, right? And I can't help but think that even in an organization focused on something like engineering, right? If people had better skill sets, things would be better. So I hope I've convinced you. Developing your people should be your number one priority in most cases. If you're an exception, I'd love you to send a message to me or put a message in the discussion for this video, because I can't think of an organization or a leadership position where developing people isn't a priority. But if you know one, let me know. All right. Remember, we had 3 overarching themes this week. Be intentional. Be intentional about the choices that you make. And that should be true all the time as leaders, but it's especially true when we're working from home and we're just in this new environment and we're trying to figure stuff out and we're reactive, right? And so, number 1, if you do nothing else from this series, stop and think about the choices that you have and be intentional about making your choices. Whether they're the ones that I would suggest or not, just be intentional about making your choices. Work really hard to limit transitions and distractions. We've talked about routines. We've talked about setting up your spaces and managing your communication. So do everything you can to manage those. If you can stop interruptions, your productivity is going to go up. And your mental health and happiness. And then related to that, engage fully. So if we can create those spaces and we can create that time and limit those interruptions, we can really engage in the meaningful work. Even in this new environment, even in a mode of crisis, we can focus on supporting and developing our people and helping them grow and get better, which rewards them, improves our organization, and makes us feel good. And we can focus on thinking about what's next for organization and what are the ways that we need to adapt to this new world and this new reality. So being intentional, limiting interruptions, and then engaging fully in your work. I hope you've pulled something from this week that will help you with all 3 of those things. So if this has been valuable, please subscribe. This is the wrap up of this series, but I'll be producing other content on a weekly basis. I'd like to do a follow-up for this series. So if you have things that you'd like me to cover that I haven't, If you want to let me know what's resonated with you, or maybe things that you didn't agree with, or other ideas you have, I'd love to hear those. So please go ahead and leave a message in the discussions section. And you can learn more about my work at my website at frederickbuskey.com. You can read the content that goes along with this video at frederickbuskey.com/blog. And those were published from March 30th through April 3rd, 2020. And feel free to email me at fbuskey@gmail.com. So that's it. That wraps up this series. I really appreciate that you've tagged along with me and let me walk this part of the journey with you. And I hope to see you again. Until then, do good and be well.